Let's talk about the pillars of good health for midlife women. We know that nutrition is super important, and we need to be getting the right amount of protein, carbs, and fat. We talk on the show a lot about weight bearing and resistance exercise. Stress management is key, social connections, and then, of course, sleep. I know that I am not alone when I say sleep has been a struggle for me, and that really started in perimenopause. But the good news is that with some hormone therapy and lifestyle changes, I'm finding that sleep is not as elusive as it once was. But if you look at the other pillars of good health besides sleep, they're all adversely affected by poor sleep. We tend to eat poorly when we don't sleep well. We crave more carbohydrates than we need. We may not work out as efficiently and have low energy, higher stress levels, and ultimately we may pass on maintaining those social connections due to the fact that we're just too tired. Sleep really is the building block of health. If you truly struggle with sleep or even have insomnia, there are medical professionals and coaches out there to help you get the Z's that you so deserve. Health, wellness, career, relationships, and everything in between. We're removing the taboo from what really matters in midlife. I'm your host, Michelle Folan, and this is Asking for a Friend. Welcome, everyone, to Asking for a Friend. Our guest expert today is a double certified holistic sleep coach who helps women reclaim their rest and their health by leading them to a land of better, bountiful sleep, which is the cornerstone of whole body health. Gosh, don't I know it. Welcome to the show, Morgan Adams.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm excited to have this sleep chat with you.
Well, I think this age group appreciates this type of discussion because I'm not sure I have many friends that don't struggle with their sleep. But before we get started, I'd love for you just to tell the listeners a little bit more about you, where you're from, and then how you got interested in becoming a holistic sleep coach.
Yeah, well, I am born and raised in Richmond, Virginia. It's currently where I live now. My sleep story started, I've been sleeping all my life, obviously, but the whole thing kind of came to a head when I was in my mid-30s. I was having a personal crisis in a relationship, and that caused a bout of insomnia. I had the kind of insomnia called sleep onset insomnia. Basically, what that means is I laid awake for a really long time when I went to bed and waiting to get to sleep. I was waiting up to 2 hours some nights to get to sleep. If people out there are dealing with that, they can certainly relate to that frustration and worry and anxiety. What I ended up doing because of that situation was consulting with my primary care doctor. And I was recommended to take Ambien, which I did because I just thought, well, this is what the recommendation is. I'm going to try this. It did help me get to sleep more quickly. The problem is that the next day I had incredible grogginess and brain fog up until probably morning. And it did actually start to impact my job, my day job, which at the time was a PR position in a health department where I had to write things very quickly if there was like a crisis brewing. And there were several times where I had an assignment that was due like lickety split and I could not produce it because I was so brain foggy. And we can get more into that Ambien story later because I have a lot more to share about that. But what ended up getting me off the Ambien was meeting my now husband, who was at that time 8 years ago, my new boyfriend. He said to me one night, Morgan, it kind of freaks me out when you take these pills to sleep because you sort of act like a zombie after you take them. And I was like, whoa, I just got called out in a loving way. And I thought, okay, I really need to stop taking these pills because I don't like taking them. I was just conflicted. I did what I don't recommend people to do, and that's take yourself off the sleeping pill.
So you went cold turkey.
I did go cold turkey, and I don't recommend this strategy because it's very difficult to do, and it can be sometimes a little dangerous. I would recommend for someone who's going to get off a sleeping pill to consult their prescribing provider who can give them a tapering off schedule of some kind, because there are several out there. I think it also helps to have a sleep coach partnered up with you to help you with the accountability and the support, because it's not easy. I wish I had existed back then to hire, because I had to kind of white knuckle it. But fortunately, I got through it. I slept decently for years after that. And then there was a plot twist, and that was in March of 2020, right when the pandemic started, and everyone didn't know which way was up, and my sleep started to suffer again. And I got really worried because I didn't want to go back to that huge episode of insomnia that I had recovered from. I started to be very proactive. I got an Oura ring to track my sleep. I started to research online what was good practice for sleep hygiene, and I was able to get myself back on track. And what I ended up doing was just organically sharing on Facebook what I was doing to help my sleep. And it turned out that a lot of other people in my circle were struggling with their sleep as well during this time of the pandemic. And I just got so caught up in this sleep stuff that I decided my mission was going to be to help other women with their sleep, because I knew how much of a superpower sleep was to me. And I was like, I've got to share this out into the world. So that is how I decided to become a holistic sleep coach. I made that decision at the end of 2020.
I say this all the time, and I hope people don't get tired of it, but so many of my guests have decided during the pandemic to do new, really cool things.
Yes.
It's just so funny how that time of our lives really did spawn so much creativity and drive to do things.
It was a blessing and a curse in so many ways, but the blessing for a lot of us was that we did find our true calling and our true passion.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. You talk about people in your circle who were struggling with sleep. So many midlife women do struggle with sleep. We know that sleep's super important, but specifically the benefits of sleep for women, what are they, and what are the effects of poor sleep?
Well, sleep affects basically every facet of your well-being. We can start at the brain for brain health. When you are in deep sleep, that is when most of your human growth hormone is released. Your brain has something called a glymphatic system, which is like a lymphatic system with a G. And it's essentially a way for the toxins to get cleared out at night. So when you're giving yourself that deep sleep, you're allowing your brain to be washed in the best way possible. So you've got the brain health aspect, you've got the heart health, emotional and mood regulation, which is super important. We find also that when we are well slept, we have more empathy and the ability to relate with others. So it can actually help our partnerships, our work relationships. It helps our hormone regulation, our hunger hormones, our sex hormones. It helps us fight infections. It helps us prevent from getting sick with a cold or, a bug or a germ. It helps us with injury prevention as well. The benefits are endless. One of the things that I like to focus on in my profession as a sleep coach is really honing in on the benefits, because I'm exposed to a lot of different articles about sleep coming up in my feed, and so many of them are gloom and doom. These bad things are going to happen to you if you're not sleeping. While they're trying to be helpful, it actually can be not helpful in some ways, because number one, they're looking at correlation, not causation studies. So they're taking some data and they're not actually, some of the studies are not done correctly. So we're seeing outcomes that we may not be sure are caused from lack of sleep. I don't really think that fear motivates most people. I don't find that these articles are super helpful. When you're talking about someone who has insomnia, which is quite a few of the folks I work with, it actually makes them more anxious.
I would think so.
To see these headlines, because it just feeds their anxiety, which is already pretty high. Just to briefly touch on some of the things that can go wrong when you're not slept very well. Immediately, you're going to see low concentration, poor mood, trouble making decisions, You'll probably be hungrier long-term from like very long-term sleep deprivation. You see risks of becoming obese, having diabetes, hypertension, heart issues. You've got some longer-term things going on, but again, just pointing out that those are correlational, not necessarily causational, because we can't really control the factors in these studies well enough to say this causes this.
Well, it sounds like every menopausal woman.
Yeah.
I'm not laughing, but I'm laughing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it checks off all the boxes for menopause.
Right.
So again, what came first, chicken or the egg? What is the actual definition of insomnia?
The technical definition is when somebody is having trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking up too early at least 3 days a week. There's two different branches of insomnia. There's acute insomnia, which could last up to 3 months. And then if it goes on for longer than 3 months, it's technically called chronic insomnia. The other caveat to that is that in addition to those parameters, you also have to have problems with daytime functioning. It has to actually be a problem for you in the daytime. That is the technical definition.
What's typically happening when you can't fall asleep versus the waking up at 3 a.m.?
What I have noticed with my clients, this is a generalization, but with people who have sleep onset insomnia, which is when you're having trouble falling asleep, typically what I'm seeing is that those folks are very anxious and worried, and they have a lot of rumination, and they've associated stress with their bed. When people are waking up at 3 a.m, it could be a variety of things. It could be that they're worried, but what I'm finding most often is that they're waking up from either sleep apnea episodes, they're too hot, they have a blood sugar spike or a dip. It's usually, not always, but it typically seems to be like a physical source of their waking up versus like the kind of mental source. I did want to say that waking up at 3 a.m., 2 a.m., or just waking up in general during the night is very normal. In fact, after each sleep cycle, we typically wake up very briefly, and we wake up so briefly we can't even remember it. So if you've woken up for less than 3 minutes, chances are you're not going to remember it. The problem is when people wake up and they kind of freak out. That's when things go awry. What I really try to help my clients understand is that like, hey, you've woken up at 3 a.m. This is normal. There's nothing to be alarmed about. It's, I think, the worry that exacerbates the issue and creates a condition where they're not going to get back to sleep very soon. Now, if you are waking up several times during the night, if you're waking up more than a couple times, that might be cause for delving into something, because what I am finding is that there are women out there who have sleep apnea who are waking up several times a night, and their disrupted breathing is the cause of that. They need to be screened for sleep apnea for sure. It's just a very underreported problem with women. In fact, 90% of women who have sleep apnea go undiagnosed. So I'm really trying to beat the drum on that and encourage my clients to get tested if I suspect that they might have a sleep breathing issue.
Yeah, we don't talk about sleep apnea very much in women, but it's probably more prevalent than we realize.
Yeah.
I told you part of the platform of Asking for a Friend is that listeners will ask me questions. Talking about this 3 a.m. waking up thing, Susan asked if I wake up at 3:30 a.m., which sounds like that's what her usual wake up time is.
Yeah.
At what point should I just get up and get out of bed? And do you have recommendations for strategies to fall back to sleep?
I think 3:30 is a little bit early to get out of bed and start your day. I would not recommend doing that. What I would recommend trying, there are a few different things. One thing I would try would be lying in bed and doing something called 4-7-8 breathing. So it's 4 counts in, hold the breath for 7, exhale for 8. That can be an effective technique to get you more relaxed and more into a state where you might be likely to fall asleep. That's a suggestion. Another suggestion would be, I hope I'm not talking out of two sides of my mouth. What I'm trying to say here is I wouldn't suggest getting out of bed and expecting to start your day. But what you could do is you could get out of bed if you're frustrated and if you've been in bed for like half an hour and you're awake and you're just getting frustrated, is to take yourself out of the bedroom, go to another room in dim light and do something relaxing until you become sleepy again.
Like read a book or
knit or, do an adult coloring book or whatever. That's part of a CBTI technique called stimulus control, which we use quite a bit with insomnia or sleep issues. It doesn't work for every single person, but these are just some ideas to test out because I'm a big believer in testing out these different techniques to see what does work for you. Those are a couple of things one could try.
Okay. Would you recommend at that point not to get on your cell phone?
Oh, definitely not.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, one caveat might be if you are using your cell phone for a breath work or a meditation app, that would be the exception. But I would definitely try to stay away from scrolling on social media because that's just going to potentially heighten your anxiety. And of course, we have to think about the fact that we're looking at a screen and the blue light could disrupt our melatonin secretion. There's that.
Yeah. That was another question from a listener. Roberta wanted to know how effective blue blocker glasses are if you do have to be on a screen in the evening.
I do actually like blue blocking glasses a lot. Personally, I find them to be very helpful. I actually watch TV at night as part of my evening routine. Some people are like, what? You watch TV?
I know. I was going to say.
Like, you're a sleep coach. What are you doing? It's like kind of strange, but here's how I do it. I wear a pair of dark red lenses for blue blockers. I have an actual TV that I'm looking at and I'm fairly far away from the screen. So I'm not like holding a laptop on my lap looking right at the screen. And I'm also choosing content that is not stimulating or provocative or scary. I'm watching cooking shows or documentaries about wildlife. I mean, like things that are just kind of bland, but semi-entertaining. With the blue blockers, there are different camps on that. A lot of people are like, oh, it's just rubbish. It's not really effective. I think your mileage may vary. I think it's specific to the person as to whether or not they will work. But I did find something interesting. I use the Aura Ring and I get their blog posts sent to me, and they occasionally will send data that's an aggregate of members. In an Aura Ring, you can tag what you've done. What they did was they had people tag when they've worn blue blocking glasses. There was a 7% decrease in wake time for those people who were wearing blue blocking glasses. That's interesting data to think about. I talk to people about this all the time, and several people say to me that they do become more drowsy when they wear the glasses. And that happens to me. I wear the glasses, and I do recommend people try them because it's a really easy intervention that's not too cumbersome or expensive. I am a fan, but I think that the caveat is shop around for a really reputable brand because there's some really cheap ones online that are not actually effectively blocking out the blue rays. So you want to be smart about which brands you're shopping with.
Okay. Maybe even ask your eye doctor for a recommendation.
Maybe. I'm not sure that I haven't been to the eye doctor in so long. I don't. It's a kind of a reminder to get to one. But yeah, maybe the eye doctor, perhaps.
I did a show on dry eye and making sure we take care of our peepers when we get midlife.
I should probably listen to that one.
Yeah, maybe you should. Back to your watching TV at night. I find that House Hunters International is good to fall asleep to. It's so boring. But yeah,
that's funny.
I do watch some TV at night, I admit.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about your Aura Ring, and I've heard two camps on sleep trackers. For some people, it kind of stresses them out because they see how little REM and deep sleep they're getting. And Marianne asked, because she wears a Garmin fitness tracker, and she wanted to know how to get more REM and deep sleep because now she knows how little she's getting.
Well, a couple things about the sleep trackers. I think they're great tools to use if you're the kind of person who is looking to optimize your sleep. And if you can look at data from a dashboard on your phone or screen, and you're able to notice trends and you're able to make some changes based on what you're seeing. If you're that kind of person, I think a tracker is great. They can be somewhat problematic for the reason you mentioned. People look at the deep and the REM score and they start to freak out. What I need to remind people of all the time is that the REM and deep sleep scores are about 60% accurate with a tracker like this. It's not telling the whole tale. I will say as a caveat, the Oura Ring has a new algorithm, and I'm part of the beta test version. They're actually showing 85% accuracy with deep and REM. When I've been using the Oura Ring, I got a little cocky, and I'll tell you why. It was saying I got to 30 to 40% deep sleep.
Oh.
And I was like, wow, I'm a deep sleep rock star.
That's freaky.
I know. It's so crazy. And then the new algorithm came out. When I look at the stats the next day, I can see the old algorithm and the new algorithm. And quite often there's a very big discrepancy. Today, for example, it said I got 10% deep sleep on the new algorithm. But guess what? I don't freak out. You know why? Because I feel great in the morning. Ultimately, I guess the point of this is you have to really pay attention to how you feel versus what a tracker tells you. Because quite often we can look at a tracker and see bad data and start to feel worse.
Yeah.
There's like a big psychological suggestion component there. What I did once was I did like a data ring fast, a tracker fast, where I went without it for like a week. But every morning around 9 or 10, I would actually write down on a piece of paper what I thought my score was. And then later on, I matched the score because I wanted to see how accurate I was, you know, and I was within a couple points each day.
Okay.
I think sometimes when you are using a device like that, take a little respite from it for a week or so and see. Another thing you can do is to just check the scores once a week, just to keep track, to see if there's anything that needs to be adjusted or anything like that.
I like to wear mine because I try to correlate my evening behaviors and daytime behaviors to my quality of sleep. But I do agree with you that I can often tell what my sleep score is just by how I feel when I wake up in the morning. It's almost a game.
Yeah, it is almost a game. Exactly.
We talked about sleep trackers. What is the ratio, though? How much deep sleep to REM to light sleep should we be getting?
We spend about a half of our night in light sleep. That's very normal. As far as REM and deep, I would say a good REM score would be 20-25%, and deep might be like 15 to 20%, give or take.
I had a night recently where I had 19 minutes of deep sleep, and I felt awful.
You felt it?
I did.
Sometimes it can be a fluke. Sometimes I'll experience those where it's like there's hardly any deep sleep, yet I feel great, and I'm like, it's a fluke. But then there's some nights where I'm like, I can identify things that caused lack of deep sleep, and I'm like, yeah, I'm usually hungrier the next day. That's a big sign.
Oh, yeah.
Because my hunger hormones got dysregulated. You kind of have to just take everything with a grain of salt.
I know. What do you think about naps?
I think they're a great practice for a lot of folks. I would say that if you are going to take a nap, make it a short nap, like 20, 30 minutes, and try to plan for that nap, maybe before 3 p.m. Because sometimes if you take a longer nap too late in the day, it's like snacking before dinner. It takes away your sleep hunger, so you're less tired at night. If you allow yourself to nap too long, 45 minutes, an hour or more, you could get into a deeper sleep phase. And when you wake up, you have sleep inertia. So you're like even groggier than you were before you took your nap. Yeah. I mean, I think they're great. If you are finding that you're like super reliant on naps all the time, that might be a sign that your sleep is not great. But for the occasion where, I mean, it happens to all of us where we didn't get a great night of sleep, or we went to a party and we were out too late. I mean, like we want to enjoy ourselves. We want to live our lives and socialize. And if you're short on sleep, it's better to rely on a nap the next day and quote, catch up on it the day after, because you can't really catch up on sleep after, like you can't have a bad week of sleep, like Monday through Friday. You can't expect to catch up on all of it in one weekend. It's just impossible. So it's better to pay that sleep back the next day if possible. And a short nap could be a great way to do it.
I had a feeling that's what you were going to say, but
yeah,
thought I'd better ask.
Yeah.
Let's talk about supplements and sleep aids. You did mention Ambien, but there's also, I know magnesium, which I take. There's melatonin. how do you usually coach your clients through these types of supplements?
Well, I'm not a big supplement pusher, but I would say a fair amount of women that I work with are taking a sleeping pill and they are trying to stop taking a sleeping pill. So in those situations, it works great for people to substitute a supplement for a medication, because to say you're going to now not take anything is a little bit anxiety provoking. That's when I weave in supplements. I'm not against them at all, but I think that they are supplements. They're not the foundation. I think there are a lot of other things to work on first, and then adding a supplement can be very helpful. As far as different ones, I mean, you said you took magnesium or you take that. Mm-hmm. I think magnesium is a great supplement. I don't even really classify it as a sleep supplement. I look at it as more of just like a vitamin D or a multivitamin, because magnesium helps like 300 different bodily processes. It's doing a lot more than just helping with sleep. And most of us are deficient in magnesium. So I think magnesium is something that frankly most people should be taking anyway. Melatonin, you mentioned, that's kind of a hot topic. There's like camps that are really against it and camps that are like really for it. I'm kind of like somewhere in the middle. There isn't a lot of data on melatonin for insomnia. And when you look at the studies, you're finding that it maybe helps people get to sleep on average like 7 minutes faster. It might give them maybe 8 more minutes of sleep total throughout the night, which is not a game-changing amount. One of the issues that I find though with melatonin is that people are taking too much of it. The reason is, I think, because melatonin is typically sold in 3 and 5 milligrams. I wouldn't say that's like an overdose by any stretch, but it could be actually a little bit too much for some people. Another problem with melatonin is that they did a study several years ago and they basically pulled random melatonins off shelves, and they found that 70% of those melatonin supplements had wild variances, either way less or way more. That can become a problem. For example, if you got one that had way more in it that was advertised on the bottle, you could potentially be groggy the next day. My suggestion, if people want to try melatonin, is to look for one with a USP label. USP labels basically are the stamp of saying what's in the bottle is what's advertised on the label.
Okay.
You're getting the milligrams that you're supposed to be getting. I don't think there's any harm in trying it. I do feel like there's potentially a pretty big placebo effect with melatonin, and there's nothing wrong with that. Placebo effect is okay, but I think a lot of people are taking it and don't need it. One way you can find out if you need it is to get a hormone test. You can find out if you're deficient. Then you actually have more of a case to supplement.
All right.
Why supplement if you already are producing it?
Are there any other supplements, if you will, that help with sleep?
I dabble with several, or have in the past, and some have not really worked very well. There are a couple that I think have worked very well. I'm a fan of things that have a GABA in them. GABA is something that is a relaxant. It helps kind of calm the brain down, same as L-theanine. Tart cherry is another ingredient that has a lot of data. I'm not as crazy about like valerian root and some of the herbs. Some people find that valerian root makes them groggy the next day. I feel like, there's just so many supplements on the market that it's better to just test them out and see what works. And if you have a sleep tracker, that's how I evaluate how the sleep supplements are working. I've only found one that actually has moved the needle with my Oura Ring scores. So I just kind of stick with that. And I've recommended that supplement to clients and it didn't do anything for them. It's just very individual and you have to just kind of experiment.
Now, let's talk a little bit about circadian rhythm, because I'm reading more and more about circadian rhythm and the importance of sunlight. Can you speak to that just a bit?
Light is our biggest circadian rhythm marker. It's very important for regulating our circadian rhythm. In the morning, we want to make sure that we're getting about 10 minutes of sunlight as soon as we can when we've woken up. And then trying to get some sunlight throughout the day is also very important. And then at the end of the day, we want to flip the script a little bit. As the sun is going down, we want to start dimming the lights because that's signaling to our bodies that it's time to sleep. We can really use light in a very, very strategic way to help our sleep and our energy. And one thing is, I have to say this, I feel like I say this all the time, but a lot of people haven't gotten the memo, is when you are going for your walk in the morning, take your sunglasses off.
Yeah.
I see so many women in my neighborhood walking their dogs while I'm walking my dog, and they're wearing their sunglasses at, 7 or whenever in the morning. The problem is you need the light to hit your retina. The sunlight has to hit your retina, because when that happens, it sends a signal to your suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is your circadian pacemaker. And when that light hits, a very beautiful cascade of hormones and neurotransmitter secretions happen. It will shut off your melatonin from the morning. It will increase your serotonin. It'll increase your cortisol to give you energy. You want to have eyes that don't have sunglasses on them.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But sometimes people don't like the way their eyes look in the morning. And maybe that's why they're wearing their sunglasses, because they didn't get a good night's sleep the night before.
That's right. Yep, exactly.
It's a domino effect.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Oh my gosh. How about exercising? Are you saying too we should probably do our exercising earlier in the day?
I'm a fan of early morning exercise. It seems like women in midlife seem to respond to that early morning exercise better. The problem with evening exercise is that sometimes it is a little bit too alerting and your body doesn't have a chance to adequately cool down. Early morning exercise is actually better for helping your circadian rhythm in a lot of ways, especially if you're going outside to get your exercise. As far as exercise goes, Matthew Walker, who is a famous sleep scientist that a lot of people know of, he shared some information about a study that I'll share back with you. They studied middle-aged adults. There were like 3 groups of people. One group got moderate intensity aerobics. One group got high intensity aerobics. And the third group got moderate to intense weight training. The results were that the group who had the most sleep benefits was the aerobic group, and moderate exercise was actually more sleep promoting than very high intensity exercise.
Interesting.
That gave some interesting data, because a lot of people are asking, well, what kind of exercise is better? I mean, I'm a big proponent of weight training for midlife women. I do it regularly. I would say still do your weight training, but add in some cardio as well, moderately, not too intense.
This is great. I love this. I'm kind of excited because I've been doing more weights and doing all that.
Good for you.
I'm trying. I would love to talk about caffeine, alcohol, and foods that aren't maybe doing us any favors when it comes to our sleep.
Yes. With caffeine, we want to make sure that we are limiting it in the afternoon. I actually encourage people to have a caffeine curfew of maybe noon or 11 a.m. because it's got a very long quarter life. So it has a quarter life of 10, 12 hours. A 2 o'clock coffee could be in your system by the time you go to bed. Caffeine curfew is good. Also, an alcohol curfew is great. I would recommend that if someone wants to have alcohol that they think more in terms of happy hour versus a nightcap, have your wine or your cocktail at 5 versus 8, because you really want to have about 3 full hours to process that alcohol. And this is an experiment that I've done many times with my Oura Ring, experimenting with having a drink at 4 or 5 versus 7 or 8. It really makes a huge difference. Consider the timing.
I can't begin to tell you how many conversations I've had with friends and acquaintances about the wine wake up at 3:30 in the morning.
Yep.
Do you know what causes that?
Yes. It's called REM rebound effect. The wine will take away the first part of your REM cycle, will cut short your REM cycle. And then towards the end of earlier in the morning, it will take away your sleep. You'll get sleep disruption. That's what creates those wake ups. You're also probably dehydrated. You may even need to use the restroom at that point. It is very disruptive, and most people in midlife report exactly what you're saying. I mean, I've experienced it myself.
Yeah.
It's almost not even worth having any alcohol at this point,
I know. It's funny because I've been pretty open about really having cut back on my alcohol consumption. One thing that I did notice is I'm sleeping better through the night, but it's harder for me to fall asleep.
Yeah. That's the one thing about alcohol that is very appealing for a lot of people, because it does help them relax and fall asleep. It's used quite often as a sleep aid. I would say in that situation, lean into more relaxation practices that'll help you calm down instead of the alcohol.
What about CBD?
I'm not super familiar with CBD. I don't think there's a whole lot of data on it. I think that if you have a lot of anxiety or pain, then CBD may be something to experiment with. But again, like with melatonin, you need to really check your source. You want to make sure that you're buying from somebody who's selling organic CBD oil. You don't want to go to the mall and buy it. Like, you want to really shop around and make sure that you're getting a legitimate source. But at this point, there's just not a whole lot of data. Although anecdotally, I know many people in my own circle who swear by it and it helps them a lot. If it's helping you, I think it's a legitimate product. It's anti-inflammatory and there's a lot of benefits. I personally used it on and off, didn't notice a difference. I was like, I'll save myself $80 a month because I was buying the good stuff.
Yeah, I've done it too. It helped with my joint pain, but I don't think it necessarily helped with my sleep. I wanted to know if you would share with the listeners a little bit about your cancer journey.
Yeah.
Because I have to say that probably affected you and your sleep greatly.
Yeah. Well, I was diagnosed in 2018 with stage 1 breast cancer, estrogen receptor positive, and luckily caught it early. I was presented with the options of getting a lumpectomy with radiation or a mastectomy, and I opted out of both of those. The reason why is because both of my parents had passed away from cancer and they underwent chemo. They didn't react well to it. They had a lot of side effects. I saw that their quality of life was diminished by the treatments. I went to a holistic cancer treatment center in Cancun, Mexico for 3 weeks and got treatments. I spent like 5 hours a day in treatments, like vitamin C drips, infrared sauna, hyperbaric oxygen chamber, like tons of these treatments. The tumor didn't grow, but the tumor didn't shrink either. It just kind of stayed where it was. I kept watching it, getting it looked at, and finally, after a certain period of time, I said, I just don't like the fact that the tumor's still there. I had a lumpectomy. They took it right out. Less than 3 years later, so in 2021, I was going to get my breast implants removed. I had had breast implants since I was 33. And I was like, it's time to get these removed. They're old. They're 18 years old. So one of the prerequisites to getting the explant surgery was to have a mammogram. And I almost didn't get the mammogram because the mammogram missed my first cancer. But there was a little voice inside me that said, go ahead and get that mammogram and just make sure you're clear. Well, the mammogram showed DCIS, which is stage 0 breast cancer. It's technically precancer, but it was a whole lot of it in my opposite breast. I made the decision to get a double mastectomy after that point because I did not want to just play whack-a-mole with these issues and every few years wonder, where is it going to be this time? I had that double mastectomy late in 2021 and I opted to not get reconstruction. So I am flat chested,
Yeah.
nothing there.
And that is a huge decision to make, Morgan. I admire that you decided to take that leap. I'm just curious now with your coaching, the work that you're doing with other people, did that help you mentally recover because you were in that mode of helping others?
I think that the struggles that I went through increased my level of empathy greatly. And it helped me really understand and gave me a very good perspective on life and what is important in life and priorities. I honestly don't think I would have become a coach without having gone through that breast cancer journey, because that whole experience reinforced to me the value of health, holistic health, not just in one area. If I can in some way impart with my work women getting healthier, then, I've done my job.
Well, and that's why I like following you on Instagram, because you post things not just about sleep, but I see you lifting weights and you're eating well and you're really endorsing a whole lifestyle, a whole healthy lifestyle.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Do you have any client testimonials that you'd be willing to share?
I have a couple. Most of the women that I work with are probably over 40, but I have, a couple women who are younger. One of my younger clients, interestingly, she came to me after having been working with a psychologist. A clinical psychologist she worked with was doing CBTI with her, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. I won't get into the whole how that works, but one of the tenets of CBTI is you're having to, in the very beginning stages, you are not getting as much sleep because you're trying to basically retrain your sleep and compress it. And so the psychologist was having her go to bed at like 1 a.m. So she was getting like 5.5 hours of sleep, and she was crying on her way to work. And she's like, I can't do this anymore. And the psychologist wouldn't be flexible with her. She was kind of like, well, it's my way or the highway. So when my client came to me, I had a lot of data points to work with, but ultimately what I ended up doing with her is a much more gentle version of CBTI, and then weaving in a lot of mindfulness and something called ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapies. Some of those components really helped reduce her hyperarousal and her anxiety about sleep. And so that is what actually helped her get herself back on track. And she's doing beautifully now.
That's great. That's really nice to hear. Do you have group coaching? Do you do one-on-one only? How does that work when people work with you?
I am currently doing one-to-one coaching. So it's a package of 6 sessions that you purchase, and we usually meet every week via Zoom, and then you have access to me between sessions via an app where we chat back and forth. So you always have support while we're working together. Group coaching is something I'm thinking about doing, but it's not on the immediate horizon. Maybe in a year or so, if the demand is there, I'll go in that direction. But I really love the intimacy of one-to-one and just really holding the hand of the woman that I'm helping, because sleep is just so unique. Each client has her own issues, and I want to tailor everything to that client. I'm just supposing it would be a little harder to do in a group. So for now, one-on-one is kind of my sweet spot.
Where can people find you?
They can find me at morganadamswellness.com. I have a newsletter you can sign up for to get little nuggets about sleep and health.
Cute.
I don't know when you plan to launch this episode, but I'm going to be offering...
That's Morgan's dog saying hello.
Yes, he's greeting everyone.
We don't care about barking dogs. So I'm sorry, back up. You can tell me what you're saying.
Oh, probably within a month or so, I'll be launching a free mini course on morning and evening routines to promote sleep. You can also book a free consultation with me if you want to discuss potentially coaching. I'm also on Instagram, which is how we met, and my handle there is morganadams.wellness. So you can follow me there.
Fantastic. This was great. Morgan, I really appreciate you being here. Follow Morgan on Instagram. You'll love her posts. She puts herself out there, and I love that. Give her a follow, and thank you for being here.
Thanks so much, Michelle.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Follow Asking for a Friend on social media outlets and provide a review and share this show wherever you get your podcasts. Reviews and sharing help us grow.